Alrighty, I figured it was about that time for what you ask. Well, maybe you didn't ask, but too bad you're getting it anyways. An updated 2018 NBA mock draft. Yeah, and this one's a 2-round edition. So you can peep all 2 rounds worth of picks, all 60 of them sons of guns, in the description box down below. Now I know it's one of these things where I put a lot of time and effort into compiling one of these mock drafts, and the truth is it doesn't matter, because what mock draft matters? The last one. Same as the NFL, and not to toot my own horn, but toot mother humper. I didn't do that bad with that one, especially compared to others, especially more notable national names. Now, in terms of this though, still a long ways to go, a lot of things to figure out. I really don't have a good idea of what is ultimately going to happen outside of I feel pretty comfortable about who the top 8 players chosen in this draft are going to be. Sure, there could be a surprise or two, and sometimes there is, and there definitely could be. But right now, it feels like the top 8 players are pretty well set. Doesn't necessarily mean the order that those 8 players are picked in is set, but in terms of the top 8 players, it feels like they're relatively set. It's Ayton, it's Bagley, it's Jackson, it's Doncic, it's Bamba, it's Porter, it's Carter, it's Trae Young. So what it feels like to me are the top 8 players in this draft in terms of what the consensus of the NBA probably would be. But who knows? And again, we still got a few weeks to go, so a lot of that stuff can change. Now, before you sit there and just start bitching and moaning, it's one of these things. Spend all this time on this, and it really doesn't matter. Because the only mock draft that truly matters is the last one. This is just for conversation and comparative purposes, and that is it. And then some of you will not even watch the video as I'm even talking right now, or some of you still will, and it doesn't matter, as you will gripe, bitch, and moan about the picks that I made, and your gripes don't really matter. It's just weird how that works out. But anyways, when I look at this mock draft, on this particular version, I say, well, okay, let's go with one of the possibilities out there, which is the Suns decide to go DeAndre number 1 overall. And then Sacramento and Atlanta pass on Doncic as well because they're concerned about whether Doncic is going to come stateside, whether he's actually going to want to play for them, and will they take Marvin, Bagley, and Jaren Jackson Jr.? And that's a possibility. I don't know if it's the best possibility, the smartest possibility, but I do feel like it is a possibility. Which would leave Luka Doncic there potentially for the Grizzlies at number 4, and with him you could play him in a bit of a point forward role when you have the concerns about his lack of foot speed and whether or not he could be a true point guard. Like Ben Simmons is 6'10", but he's quick enough with his feet to be a true point guard. I don't feel like Luka Doncic could be the same type of thing, but he could be some type of point forward, and that is still a position that can exist and thrive in today's modern NBA. You look at DeAndre Ayton. I understand some people view him as the top pick in the draft or the top player in this draft, and I understand it. 7'1", great offensive skill. They're seeing some elements of maybe a Karl-Anthony Towns in him or a Joel Embiid in him. The concern I have for Ayton right now is defensively, is he going to be able to hang in the fourth quarter in the NBA? Furthermore, the teams that do the best, the teams that get the closest to being a championship team, aren't built on big-time big men anymore. They just aren't. You look at the conference finals, the final 4 teams. You can talk about super teams and all of this and all of that, but not a single one of them was built around a traditional big man. So do you really want to invest the number 1 overall pick on a center when knowing that's the modern NBA game is going away from that? I think it's a fair question to ask. Same thing for Sacramento with Bagley at 2 and Jackson at 3. It's one of those things. They could potentially, at that point in time, depending on your perspective, be the best player on the board. But is that necessarily the right direction? And do they truly end up being the best player when it really matters? It's interesting when you look at this draft. This draft has some marquee names at the 4 and 5 position, the power forwards and the centers, with Ayton, Bagley, Jackson, Bamba, Wendell Carter. You've got some pretty notable names there. Next tier, you've got Robert Williams, Mitchell Robinson, maybe Brandon McCoy you throw in there, maybe somebody like a Moritz Wagner, a Omari Spellman. But after those first few big names, like the guys I especially mentioned, you're going to see heavily dominate the top 7 to 8 picks in this draft. The Aytons, the Bagleys, the Jacksons, the Bambas, the Carters. There's a significant drop-off in terms of big men. The strength of this draft is in the 1, 2s, and 3s, the points, the 2 guards, the small forwards, and especially the 2 guards and the small forwards in this shooting guard class in particular is really, really good. While it doesn't quite have the marquee level of talent, there is a lot of depth there. You could at least see a lot of valuable role players coming out of this draft at the 2-guard position, especially with the number of teams in the NBA that will take 6'4", 6'5", 2 guards, and depending on how they're playing, they might be playing them at the damn 3 sometimes. So where big men are going to kind of dominate the top of this draft, when it comes down to it, this is a draft built around guards and the wings in general. That's where you see the strength of this draft. So if you want a big man, you got to take him early. And it's one of those things, again, like I said, is, yeah, you want to get great players regardless of position, but I still wonder the wisdom of taking an Ayton number 1 if you're Phoenix and passing on somebody like a Doncic, who seems to be a better fit for the modern NBA, and I think you could do more with offensively in the modern NBA. I look at this class and I feel like it's solid in terms of guys that could potentially rise as we get closer to the draft. I look at Lonnie Walker from Miami. I've put him at pick 12 to the Clippers. I feel like that could be a possible destination for him. He could go slightly higher. Okobo, the point guard from France, you're starting to hear more and more buzz about him. And, as teams look for potential draft and stash options, or they're looking for guys with incredibly high upside, a guy like Okobo, who I have going to Denver at 14, they could be guys that climb up. That might not be his draft reality right now, but it could potentially be in a few weeks. Kevin Huerter, the 2 guard from Maryland, I think has helped himself quite a bit in the offseason process. There's a chance he ends up going in the top 20, so I would say he's definitely been a riser as well. Dante DiVincenzo from Villanova, this is one of those types of guys, when teams get so enthralled with upside and untapped potential and physical talent and ability, those are the type of guys that can sneak into the late lottery, and I've got him going to pick 25 to the Lakers, who desperately need guard help opposite Lonzo Ball in that backcourt. He's a guy that could easily rise into the top 20 and go higher than anybody thinks. Like a couple of years ago, Thon Maker, late first-round pick, and all of a sudden you get closer to the process, you start hearing buzz about the Bucks might take him at number 10, and lo and behold, they did fucking take him at number 10. They took an inexperienced 29-year-old, whatever the hell he was, player. So you'll see guys rise and drop throughout this process. But when I look at this draft, again, big men early, the rest of it, it's all about the guards and the wings. It is a very deep, talented draft class at the 1, 2, and 3 position, specifically the 2-guard position. That is the strength of this draft. So if you need help there, the good thing for you is you can miss a guy because he goes ahead of you, and it doesn't matter because you can still get a stud. You could probably still get a somewhat of a stud a little bit later on too. But if you need a big man, you better hope you get him early because you might not find him later. But anyways, that is my 2-round mock draft. Again, check it out in the description box below. Let me know what you think. Let me know how much of an idiot I am, and we'll try this again next week, all right?